Guys, I've got some news for all of you. News that if you're a YouTuber like myself, someone who makes their living off of YouTube, someone whose entire career relies on, paying the bills with money that YouTube gives me, you can understand how it might be a little bit worrying, just a little bit, that YouTube is getting a new CEO. You see, YouTube, and most of the changes and most of the decisions that are made by a board, have to be, certified by a board of people who own large shares in Google and, overall YouTube, right? And the person who's at the head of all of that, who basically oversees all of this, is the CEO. That's my understanding of how YouTube and Google operate at the higher level. From my understanding, YouTube and its changes that it's been making recently have had, in large part, been being pushed by the guy who is about to become the new CEO. So this is like the loss of the dislike button. I think they were behind the change where, I think this was behind the change for NFT integration. He was the guy who suggested NFT integration with YouTube. This guy who they're putting forward as the new CEO is like behind, or heavily behind, a lot of the bad changes YouTube has been making recently. Now, Susan Wojcicki, the old, or Wojcicki? I actually don't know how you pronounce her last name. The old CEO of YouTube, Susan, as we'll call her, wasn't great, but she'd been CEO for over, I think a decade now she's been CEO, almost a decade at least. And YouTube's done, overall, pretty all right under Susan. It's had its problems, it's had its issues, but Susan did a pretty okay job. I think we can say that in hindsight now, right? We're all still here. She did a pretty okay job. Except for, Mumkey Jones. I think Mumkey Jones got, what YouTube did to his channel was just outright, it seemed like it was just a deliberate attempt to destroy his channel for no reason other than they didn't like him. It was bizarre. Outside of that, I think Susan did a pretty good job. And I think YouTube was, at least for the last however long Susan's been in charge of things, has done pretty all right. However, particularly recently, the last year or so, we have been seeing a lot. Susan Wojcicki did a pretty decent job. This new guy is actually behind a lot of the changes that have been being made the last year or so that have made YouTube so much worse. So, little scary. Definitely a little scary. I've got a Bloomberg video here, Bloomberg Business, that's talking about this. So let's watch.
This is a big moment for YouTube.
It's a big moment that some people have been expecting for a while.
Okay.
I'd say that the pick of succession has surprised no one who's been tracking YouTube and Google. Neil Mohan has been at YouTube in the role of Chief Product Officer.
Yeah.
I think Neil Mohan is the guy who's becoming the new CEO. You're going to have to get to know that name, by the way. You're going to be hearing it a lot when YouTube has any problems or something happens or an update occurs that people don't like.
2015, his role has expanded. In those 8 years, he actually worked with Susan Wojcicki before that on Google Ads. So he's a known entity, certainly for advertisers, and a little bit more so for YouTube creators.
Is Susan leaving YouTube at a time where they're pressured and challenged, or is she leaving them in sort of robust, rude health?
Let's say both. I mean, I think part of Susan's legacy, certainly on the business side, has been taking this asset. In 2014, when she joined YouTube, was this huge commercial.
Yeah, 2014. Unironically, I really hate the corporatization of YouTube. Do you remember how dope YouTube was before Google bought it? I think this was before Google bought it. Old Yogscast YouTube page. This is just the one that I can think of right off the top of my head. But who remembers? Do you remember this? Do you remember that when this is what YouTube looked like? They bought it in 2006. Okay, so it was well after. Never mind. Whatever changes they made that got rid of this shit. YouTube, if you had a certain amount of subscribers and you were big enough, you could literally get your own custom background and customize your channel to a ridiculous amount. These are other Yogscast members you could click on and it would take you to their channels because you could set clickable links that are invisible anywhere on the page, pretty much, if I recall correctly. So these all click and link you to social media and other platforms. These all link to other channels. Custom background and banner, custom format and layout. Here's another image of what it used to look like, but a lot smaller. Here's what it used to look like for a period. Here's what it also used to look like for a period. I know it's very small. I'm sorry. But yeah, like, YouTube used to be so fucking cool with some of the features that it had. We need more of that. If they brought that back, it would be fucking amazing. Fucking amazing.
Success, or sorry, rather huge, like, pop culture success, right? But it had never really proven itself to be profitable. They've gone through like a series of crises around the business side, but in the past 5 years, that ad business, at least from what they disclose, has more than tripled. And you know, there's moving into TV streaming. They've struggled a little bit on competing with Spotify, but their big threats now are TikTok, which is clearly a much bigger existential threat. And then just the larger threats that Google has on the regulatory side. Like, that's very unclear about YouTube's future.
So some saw this coming. This is what Susan herself had to say in a blog post that was published on Thursday morning about why the time is right for me. I feel able to do this because we have an incredible leadership team. Clearly a reference as well to Neil, who's going to take the reins. What do we know about him as a leader, as an operator?
He's incredibly googly. I mean that in the sense, if he's been there since 2008, you know, people talk to me about this. This actually does have some value in the sense of Google's a very political place, and in order to get things done, you know, YouTube is a division that has to fight for resources with Google Cloud, with Pixel, right? And certainly having someone who's been so experienced with the company is an asset. He's not a media executive, right? He never worked in media before. Like on programming, they had Robert Kinsel, who was their Hollywood chief, who left earlier this year, and I think that was his replacement was another person who worked on Google Ads. And I think it's a clear indication here. You know, YouTube has dropped their strategy to compete with Netflix and Amazon Prime. They're like all in on becoming just the premier sort of ad-based destination and competing with TikTok.
That is not good. That is, well, them not wanting to compete with Netflix is definitely good. We want YouTube competing with Twitch. That's what we want, not with TikTok. YouTube trying to compete with TikTok is, I only see it resulting in nightmare scenarios.
Before we let you go, what did you kind of reflect on in your book about Susan? What did you learn about her as you went about writing?
Yeah, Susan's a bit of a cipher. Like, unlike some, say, Sheryl Sandberg, she's not built a public profile. Most people out in the street don't know who she is. I think that's been advantageous to YouTube in some ways. They've been able to sort of avoid some of the scrutiny that Facebook has. I think what will be really interesting going forward is she is described by people who worked at Google as one of the very few humans on the planet that has a relationship with the Google founders, who are, as we know, have left the company but are still the majority shareholders. And now, as Google's having this big existential moment around AI, she's an important person there, and you know, she's clearly still consulting, but her absence, I think, will be felt.
And I imagine it shall be. Felt indeed. Yeah, so this is pretty scary. As a YouTuber, it's pretty scary. And as a YouTube viewer, if you're a YouTube viewer, you watch a lot of YouTube content, this should worry you as well. This is a big change. Susan Wojcicki has been the CEO of YouTube, has been at the helm of YouTube since 2014. And the new CEO is behind a lot of changes that have been made recently that are not good. Everything is gonna have to be Mr. Beast now. We're gonna have to see. We're gonna have to see. That's all I can really say. I am really worried about the fact that he's like a crypto NFT guy. I actually saw some Nazis on Twitter earlier today actually celebrating the CEO trade out because when they found out that he's an NFT guy, because they're hoping that because he's an NFT guy, he'll be into like Andrew Tate and like Elon Musk and all that, and that they'll now have a CEO at the helm of YouTube who represents their beliefs, which is definitely a possibility now. Can you imagine that if we got another Elon Musk tier dumb fuck at the head of the other largest social media platform? Oh yeah, Nazis on Twitter and YouTube hate Susan. Yeah. So I don't know. We're gonna have to see what happens here. I really don't think it's going to result in a good outcome, though. I think this is gonna be bad for YouTubers. I think it's gonna be bad for the platform. I think it's gonna be bad for the viewers. And I think it's gonna be good for YouTube and the ads. At least in the short term, I think it will be. But yeah, with all that said, if you enjoyed this video, y'all know what to do. Thank you so much for watching. and have a good one.